There is an argument to be made that the most dangerous animal relative to its size on land is not the honey badger, not the Tasmanian devil, not any of the animals that usually come up in that conversation. The argument, once you go through the evidence properly, points somewhere colder and less discussed. It points to a boreal forest in the northern hemisphere where a 30-pound member of the weasel family has been running a territorial operation so disproportionate to its body weight that wildlife researchers who study it for a living consistently describe it in terms that sound less like zoological observation and more like a damage report. The wolverine does not have a reputation problem. The wolverine has a reputation that is completely accurate and somehow still undersells the reality. Stories about wolverines chasing bears off kills, driving mountain lions from carcasses, and sustaining injuries that would end most animals and continuing anyway have been circulating in the communities that share a landscape with them long enough that they predate scientific study of the species. Indigenous communities across North America and Scandinavia have oral traditions about the wolverine that are consistent with each other across thousands of miles of separation, which tells you that multiple independent groups of people, through direct observation over generations, arrived at the same conclusion about what this animal is. What they concluded, expressed in different cultural languages but landing in the same place, is that the wolverine is something genuinely different from the other animals in its ecosystem and that the difference is not a matter of degree. It is a matter of category. This is that video. The first thing to understand about the wolverine is the size, because the size is the foundation of everything else on this list, and without a clear picture of it, the rest of the facts don't land with the weight they deserve. The wolverine is the largest land-dwelling member of the mustelid family, the family that includes weasels, otters, badgers, and martens. It weighs between 17 and 40 pounds. The upper end of that range is about the size of a medium dog, a Labrador retriever, something you would take to the park and throw a ball for. The wolverine at maximum size is that animal. Now keep that in mind while we go through the list of animals it has been documented successfully confronting. Black bears, grizzly bears, mountain lions, gray wolves, Arctic wolves, lynx. These are not animals that a medium-sized dog confronts successfully. These are not animals that most things confront at all if they have any alternative. The wolverine confronts them when there is food involved, and the wolverine usually gets the food. The mechanism by which it achieves this outcome at 30 pounds against animals that can outweigh it by a factor of 10 or more is what the rest of this video is about. The musculature is the starting point. The wolverine's body is built around a power-to-weight ratio that is closer to what you'd expect from a large predatory mammal than from something the size of a cocker spaniel. The muscles that operate the jaw, the neck, and the forelimbs are disproportionately developed relative to the overall body size, which is the same architectural principle that makes certain compact vehicles faster than vehicles 3 times their size. The wolverine is not moving like an animal that weighs 30 pounds. It moves like an animal that weighs 30 pounds and has organized every available gram of that weight around the application of maximum force. The bite force is the most documented expression of this. The wolverine has one of the highest bite force to body size ratios of any land mammal. Its jaw is specifically built to crack through frozen bone. Not fresh bone, frozen bone. In the boreal winter, when temperatures drop to -40 and a carcass that another predator killed and abandoned has frozen solid, the wolverine can access the marrow inside the bones because its jaw can break through the frozen structure that would defeat most larger animals. This is not a secondary capability. This is load-bearing infrastructure for the wolverine's winter survival strategy. When everything else in the boreal forest is waiting out the cold or has cached food or is managing on reduced activity, the wolverine is running its normal operation because it has the hardware to access food sources that nothing else can reach. The semi-retractable claws deserve their own paragraph because they represent a multi-application tool that makes the wolverine effective across 3 completely different terrain types simultaneously. The claws are curved and strong enough to grip ice, which allows the wolverine to climb frozen cliff faces and rocky terrain that most predators cannot access. They are wide enough to function as snowshoes, distributing the animal's weight across a larger surface area so that the wolverine moves across deep snow without the sinking that slows every other large predator in its environment. and they are sharp enough to dig through compacted earth and snow to access cached food, hibernating prey, and buried carrion. Point 1 Set of claws. 3 Professional applications. The Wolverine can go places its competitors cannot follow and access food sources its competitors cannot reach, and the claws are why. A bear that a Wolverine has stolen food from cannot pursue it up an ice face. A wolf pack that a Wolverine has successfully driven from a kill cannot follow it across terrain where the snow is deep enough to slow wolves, but not deep enough to slow an animal that is essentially wearing built-in snowshoes. The Wolverine uses terrain the same way a chess player uses the board, as a resource to be leveraged, not just a surface to move across. The scent glands produce a musk so potent that the Wolverine's common name in several languages translates roughly to skunk bear or stink bear, which is both accurate and deeply insufficient as a description of what the musk actually does functionally. The Wolverine marks cached food with this musk, and the musk is pungent enough that most other animals will not touch food so marked. This is the Wolverine's storage system. It kills or steals prey, eats what it needs immediately, caches the rest in locations distributed across its territory, marks the cache with musk, and returns on a schedule that reflects a mental map of its territory and the contents of each cache location. The cache system is what allows the Wolverine to maintain a territory of up to 500 square miles as a solo operation. No pack, no pride, no cooperation. One animal, patrolling an area the size of a major metropolitan region, maintaining a distributed network of food caches secured by chemical locks that nothing else will breach, all while simultaneously running a kleptoparasitism operation against every larger predator that makes a kill within that range. The Wolverine does not need to hunt everything it eats. It needs to hunt enough to survive and steal the rest from animals that did the hunting for it. This is an economically rational strategy, and the Wolverine has been running it longer than most of the species it steals from have existed. The cold tolerance is something that the Wolverine has not just adapted to, but actively built its entire competitive advantage around. While grizzly bears hibernate and wolves reduce their activity and deer and elk burn through energy reserves trying to stay warm, the Wolverine operates at full capacity in -40-degree weather. Its fur is specifically structured to resist frost. The guard hairs have a quality that prevents moisture from freezing to them, which is why Wolverine fur was historically the most sought-after material for the trim around the hoods of Arctic parkas. The fur around the face of the parka, the part that your breath contacts and which would ice up with any other material, would stay clear with Wolverine fur. Indigenous Arctic communities understood this from direct observation, and it reflects something important about the Wolverine's thermal engineering. It is not just surviving the cold. It is specifically built to maintain function at the interface between cold and moisture that defeats other materials and other animals. The fat reserves work in concert with the metabolic rate in a way that keeps the Wolverine moving when larger animals cannot. It does not hibernate. It does not significantly reduce its activity in winter. It patrols the same range in January that it patrols in July, which means that in winter the Wolverine has the boreal forest largely to itself, and the frozen carcasses of animals that other predators killed and abandoned are its exclusive resource. The Wolverine's winter is not a survival challenge. It is a business opportunity. The documented confrontations between Wolverines and much larger predators are worth going through in some detail, because the pattern they reveal is more important than any individual incident. The consistent element across documented Wolverine versus large predator encounters is not that the Wolverine always wins. It's that the Wolverine never concedes the premise that it should lose. The behavioral response to encountering a bear at a kill is not retreat. It is not avoidance. It is direct engagement, vocalizations, scent marking, and physical confrontation if the initial display doesn't produce the desired outcome, which is the larger animal vacating the area and leaving the food. This is not bravado in the sense of an animal making a mistake about its situation. Research on Wolverine behavior suggests they are acutely aware of the risk in these confrontations. They approach them with caution and read the specific animal they're confronting. A Wolverine will push harder against a single bear than against a group of wolves. It will adjust its tactics based on the composition and behavior of what it's facing. The Wolverine is not suicidal. It is calculating risk against reward with an accuracy that its survival rate reflects. Most wolverines that enter confrontations with larger predators survive those confrontations. The strategy works. And a strategy that works reliably against animals 10 times your size is not recklessness. It is competence. There are specific documented cases worth mentioning. In 2003, biologist Martin Collard observed a wolverine in the Canadian Rockies spend 3 days following a pack of wolves, consistently approaching kills after the wolves had fed, driving individual wolves away from the carcass, and retreating when the pack reoriented as a group before returning when their attention shifted. Over 3 days, the wolverine extracted a significant portion of the caloric content of multiple wolf kills without being seriously injured. It was not faster than the wolves. It was not stronger than the wolves. It was more patient and more persistent and more willing to sustain the discomfort of the engagement than the wolves were willing to sustain the nuisance of the wolverine. It outlasted them. That's the wolverine's core competitive advantage, stated simply. It is willing to continue longer than almost anything else is willing to deal with it. The pain tolerance sits underneath all of the above as the physiological infrastructure that makes the behavioral pattern possible. The wolverine has been documented sustaining injuries in confrontations, bite wounds, claw strikes from animals significantly larger than itself, and continuing the engagement. Not stopping to recover. Not retreating to process the injury. Continuing. The pain tolerance of mustelids as a family is notably high relative to other mammals, and the wolverine represents the extreme end of that family distribution. There is a documented case of a wolverine caught in a trap, sustaining significant injury to the trapped limb in its attempts to free itself, eventually freeing itself, and then continuing to move normally enough to evade the trapper, who returned to check the trap. The injury that ended the wolverine's trapping was not sufficient to end the wolverine's day. This is relevant to the confrontation strategy because it means the wolverine can absorb a level of physical consequence that most animals use as a signal to disengage. The bear that strikes a wolverine and expects the strike to end the confrontation is working from an assumption that does not apply. The wolverine does not use the same pain to disengagement calibration that most mammals use. It recalibrates continuously and keeps going. And the psychological effect of that on an animal that expects its physical advantage to produce a particular outcome is documented in the behavioral literature. Bears that fail to drive wolverines off through physical intimidation often simply leave. Not because the wolverine beat them, because the wolverine didn't stop, and at some point the bear decided it wasn't worth it. The solitary nature of the wolverine's operation is worth addressing directly, because it is both the context for everything above and a choice that most apex-adjacent predators don't make. Wolves cooperate. Lions cooperate. Wild dogs cooperate. Cooperation is the most common solution to the problem of predating animals larger than yourself. The wolverine is not cooperating with anything. It is running a solo enterprise across 500 square miles that includes active kleptoparasitism against pack predators that cooperate. And it is winning this enterprise not through a capability that cooperation couldn't match, but through a combination of physical tools and behavioral intensity that makes the wolverine, as a solo unit, more trouble than it's worth to the cooperative predators it steals from. That's the operational model. Be more trouble than you're worth to deal with. Consistently. Across every interaction. In every environment. At every temperature. Against every competitor. The wolverine has refined this model over millions of years, and the result is an animal that has carved out a viable existence in one of the harshest environments on Earth by making itself the least convenient thing in that environment to compete with. That is built different. That is knowing it. Drink water. Hug your mother. If you see a wolverine at a kill site, you are witnessing something that most wildlife researchers spend entire careers hoping to observe. Take a picture from a significant distance. Don't get between it and the food. See you in the next one.